In this video, we're going to be talking about a special group of numbers called the perfect cubes. A perfect cube is the result of an integer being cubed. An integer being cubed, what that means is that you're taking an integer, you're multiplying it by itself, and then multiplying it by itself again. Take a look at this cube on the left. Let's say the height of the cube is 4 meters, the length 4 meters, and the width of it is 4 meters. If we were going to find the volume of this cube, we could use the formula length times width times height. We use length times width times height for finding the volume of a rectangular prism or a cube. Alternatively, you could also use the formula volume equals s times s times s to find the volume of a cube. And the reason why you could use this for a cube is because every side length in a cube is the same. So we don't have to use different variables for each side if they're all equal. S times s times s is the same as s cubed. Let's go ahead and fill this information in for our first cube. The side length is 4. When you replace a variable with a number, that's called substitution. The power tells you how many times to record the base. So I record the base of 4 3 times. 4 times 4 gives you 16. 16 times 4 equals 64. So the volume of this cube is 64 meters cubed, or you could say 64 cubic meters. That represents, the 64 represents the volume of the cube. Remember, volume is the amount of space an object takes up or fills. Let's look at our next cube. Let's say the width is 6 inches, the height 6 inches, and the length 6 inches. We can use the same formula, volume equals s cubed, and we'll fill in, instead of s, the side length, which is 6. 6 cubed is the same as 6 times 6 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36, and 36 times 6 is 216. So 216 inches cubed, or you could read this, 216 cubic inches is the volume of this cube. 64 is a perfect cube because it was the result of an integer being multiplied by itself and multiplied by itself again. 216 is also a perfect cube because the result of an integer being multiplied by itself and multiplied by itself again. Or you could say is the result of an integer being cubed. So these two numbers are perfect cube numbers. When mathematicians were recognizing these numbers, they were thinking about, well, what should we call them? Since these numbers are the results that you get when you find the volume of a cube, they called these numbers perfect cube numbers, or perfect cubes for short. Let's take a look at the next slide. A perfect cube is the result of an integer being cubed. Let's go ahead and fill in our perfect cubes. The perfect cubes are the numbers we're writing in yellow. 0 cubed is 0. 1 cubed is 1. 2 cubed, well, let's think about it. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 cubed, well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 4 cubed, we already said, was 64. 5 cubed is 125. I think up until this point, you can just kind of think about in your head multiplying the first part and then multiply it by the last part. For example, 5 times 5 is 25. And if you know how to count by multiples of 25, then you would know that 5 25s is 125 already. So hopefully that's something that you already know. All right, 6 cubed, I'm guessing you probably don't have memorized. One way, I don't know if this helps you, 6 cubed, you could start with a 6 on the end. And then this 3, if you split it up, 2 and 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So 6 cubed is 216. 7 cubed is 343. it helps me to think about the fact that 3 plus 4 is 7, and also 3 plus 4 is 7, so 343. And then 8 cubed is 512. And this probably doesn't help much, but 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So 5 plus 1 plus 2 is 8. So 8 cubed is 512. All right, now let's go ahead and fill in. A perfect cube is the result of an integer being cubed. And now I want to see how many of these you can fill in from memory. Before you do that, though, I do need to show you something. 0 times 0 times 0 is equal to 0. Negative 1 times negative 1 is equal to positive 1. And then positive 1 times negative 1 equals negative 1. You were supposed to learn these rules last year, so I'm hoping that you remember that a negative number times a negative number is a positive number. Then when you have that positive number and you multiply it by a negative number, you get a negative number. All right, we'll look at another one. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. And then a positive 4 multiplied by a negative number gives you a negative result, negative 8. So the idea is that you're going to get a positive number from the first pair, and then you'll multiply that positive number by a negative number, resulting in a negative number. So now, fill in your perfect cubes from memory, the rest of them, but just add that negative sign in front. So pause the video, fill that in, and then play it again to check your work. All right, I hope you did pause the video. Now check your work. Did you get negative 64? Did you get negative 5 cubed to be negative 125? Did you get negative 6 cubed to be negative 216? Did you get negative 7 cubed to be negative 343? And finally, negative 8 cubed is equal to negative 512. All right, moving on to cubed roots, which are closely connected to cubing a number. What number cubed gives you the number under the cube root symbol? So this is the question you ask to figure out the answer to, for example, the cube root of 27. Recall that, well, let me grab a pen first. The radical symbol is this symbol right here. The index is the number right here. And the radicand is the number that is underneath the radical symbol. So we're asking ourselves, what number cubed gives us 27? Well, 3 cubed gives us 27. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. All right, let's ask ourselves this question again. What number cubed gives you negative 27? Well, that would be negative 3. What number cubed gives you 0? 0. All right, what number cubed gives you 125? 5. What number cubed gives you negative 125? Negative 5. What number cubed gives you negative 1? Well, negative 1. So I want you to notice the pattern. When the radicand is positive, when you're taking a cubed root, you get a positive result. When the radicand is negative, you're going to get a negative result. This is only for cube roots. All right, with 0, you're always just going to get 0. 0 is neutral. It's not positive or negative, so it's not going to change. All right, cubed root of 125 is 5, so those are both positive. That's negative. The radicand's negative, so the result's going to be negative. The radicand's negative, so the result's going to be negative. This is different than the square roots because remember, the result of a square root, there were 2 answers. It was positive or negative, because a negative number times a negative number is a positive, and a positive number times a positive number is a positive. So that's why there were 2 answers for a square root, but for a cubed root, there's only going to be 1 answer. Cubing a number is the opposite of taking the cube root. They are inverse operations. So taking the cube root is the opposite of cubing something. Cubing something is the opposite of taking the cube root. This is going to be important when we're solving equations that involve powers of 3. Let me show you how this works. So 7 cubed, 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. And then if you take the cubed root of 343, it undoes what you just did. So they're opposites. Negative 7 cubed gives us negative 343. And if you take the cubed root of negative 343, you're undoing what you just did, and you get negative 7. So these operations are opposite of each other. They're inverse operations. All right, so now we need to think of this in a different light. So before, we multiplied a number and then multiplied it by itself to get the perfect cube. Now we're going to take the cube root of the perfect cube to get the integer. So the numbers I'm writing in yellow are the perfect cubes. So the cube root of 0 equals 0. The cube root of 1 equals 1. The cube root of 8 gives us 2. Basically, what number multiplied by itself gives you 8? Well, that would be 2. The cube root of 27 equals 3. The cube root of 64 gives you 4. The cube root of 125 gives you 5. The cube root of 216 gives you 6. The cube root of 343 gives you 7. And the cube root of 512 gives you 8. Now it's time for you to practice. The only thing you need to remember is that when you get a negative result, the number underneath the cube root is a negative. So I want you to practice filling in your perfect cube numbers. Let's see if you have memorized your perfect cube numbers. So pause the video and fill those in. I hope you actually paused it, tried it on your own, and now you can check your work or fill in the ones you couldn't remember. The cube root of 0 is 0. The cube root of negative 1 is negative 1. The cube root of negative 8 is negative 2. The cube root of negative 27 is negative 3. The cube root of negative 64 is negative 4. The cube root of negative 125 is negative 5. The cube root of negative 216 is negative 6. The cube root of negative 343 equals negative 7. And finally, the cube root of negative 512 is equal to negative 8. So remember, the numbers in yellow are your perfect cubes, and these numbers you need to have memorized for your 8th grade EOG.